Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to move forward with the full-scale invasion of Rafah with or without the support of the United States. Netanyahu declared that his military would stand alone after President Biden threatened to suspend arms shipments to Israel. The hardline stance is a result of growing concerns for how the bombs could be used in Gaza's most densely populated city. Earlier on the stream, we spoke with the director of UNRWA Gaza, Scott Anderson, who is in Rafah. Anne-Marie Green asked him what he wants people to know about the situation there.
Innocent people are suffering. Most people are very much the same all over the world. They just want a better life for themselves, for their children, and to have a future. And what you see now is people that do not have a future. It'll take decades to rebuild Gaza, to give people an opportunity to try to have a better life for themselves, for their families, and that this war is having a real impact on people, on their ability to survive, on their ability to take care of their families, and on their ability to take care of their children.
CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio is following these developments from Tel Aviv. Ramy, Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will go in alone if it needs to. Can it sustain the war effort without U.S. support?
Yeah, Elaine, good to see you. That is what the Israel Defense Forces is saying. The spokesman for the military, Daniel Hagari, said, "We have what we need," that's a quote, in terms of ammunition for the Rafah operation, as well as for future planned operations. And today we did hear more defiance from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That came in an interview with Dr. Phil, the TV talk show host, who did a sit-down with him here in Jerusalem. He said, again, if we have to stand alone, we'll stand alone. And the pause that President Biden put on that weapon shipment amounts to what appears to be a drop in the bucket, really, in what the U.S. gives Israel. There is an existing standing 10-year agreement from the Obama era that allows the U.S. to send more than $3 billion of arms to Israel. And if the dollar amount falls below a certain figure, they actually don't even have to be legally disclosed. On top of that, we know that Israel has an undisclosed amount of weapon stockpiles, also from the U.S. So to your question, we might actually never really know the truth.
Well, Israel continues to carry out strikes in Rafah days after seizing control of the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing. What is happening on the ground there?
Yeah, an advance appears to be happening, Elaine. Reuters reported earlier that Israeli tanks completely encircled the eastern half of the city, and they've taken the main road that divides the city into two. And we got that news this morning and then checked in with our own CBS News team in Gaza. They told us at that same time that there was a pause that had started in the fighting and that had been going on for at least an hour. Since that, though, it's picked up. The fighting has picked up with reports of gunfire and Hamas reportedly ambushing tanks near a mosque, again, in the eastern part of the city. So if all this is true, that means the IDF has advanced closer to the built-up part of Rafah. And then just a few hours ago, Elaine, local Israeli media reported that the war cabinet here approved the IDF to go deeper into Rafah, and that was a unanimous decision.
Ramy, before we let you go, I'm wondering what people in Israel think about Rafah and what kind of public sentiment there may be on either side.
Sure. Well, in terms of what people feel here, it depends on what kind of media they will be watching. And a criticism that has been used here is that people see what they want to see. But that's something similar to what happens in any country, right? In the United States, people decide to go and follow the media that they want to believe. And so a lot of people actually will be watching, listening to Israeli media. A lot of that is focused on the domestic issue. The criticism is that they're not actually seeing what's happening as much on the ground in Gaza as what we are talking about, as what other international organizations are talking about. So here on the ground, if you want to hear what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the world, and opinions about Israel, you will be able to hear it. A lot of people here are focused very much on the domestic issue, and that is getting the hostages home, and also the political situation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
All right, Ramy Inocencio with the very latest. Ramy, thank you so much. The UN General Assembly has overwhelmingly voted in favor of a resolution to give new rights and privileges to Palestine. It calls on the Security Council to reconsider Palestine's request to join the United Nations. The U.S., Israel, and 7 other countries voted against the resolution. Meanwhile, the State Department is expected to submit a report to Congress which investigated if countries that get aid from the U.S. use it in accordance with U.S. law. Israel's conduct in Gaza is a part of that report. And lawmakers could get their hands on it as soon as today. Let's bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe for more on this. So, Ed, what is the latest from the White House and how it's monitoring the situation in the Middle East?
Well, it continues to do so, and Ramy, of course, has laid out the latest from that region. But what we are most keen for right now is the release of this long-anticipated State Department report that will essentially certify or clarify whether, in the view of the State Department and the Biden administration, Israel is violating U.S. law by using weapons that the United States provides in ways it's not supposed to. This is essentially a report that was ordered up under congressional pressure by the president amid concerns among especially Senate Democrats that Israel was using weaponry and other military equipment to continue this offensive and lead to the deaths of thousands. You remember, you've seen President Biden this week in an interview concede that weapons provided by the United States have been used to kill civilians in Gaza, which is to many people around the world apparent, but it was the first time he so explicitly conceded that point, and it's part of the reason why at least one shipment of thousands of thousand-pound bombs has been delayed to Israel out of concern that they may be used in a forthcoming assault on Rafah. So we'll see if that report comes later today, what it says, and how Washington officially reacts to it. And amid that, of course, the administration continues monitoring the talks between Israel and Hamas and whether it is, in fact, that the Israeli military is preparing for an offensive.
Meantime, the president is in San Francisco today and Seattle later tonight. Ed, tell us what he's doing out there.
That's right. A reminder that he is campaigning for his job, or to keep it for 4 more years. He's not holding public campaign events, but raising a significant amount of money, it's believed, probably several $1 million at stops in the Bay Area and then Seattle. Part of the ongoing push to raise as much money as possible in the cash race with the Trump campaign and put it away now ahead of a busy travel schedule come the summer. The president making those stops at the end of a week in which he's been mostly focused, as we pointed out, on foreign policy issues. But it's expected that we will hear soon exactly how much he raised in the month of April. Remember, the number at the top is roughly $72 million that the Republicans say they raised for the Trump campaign and for the Republican National Committee. The Democrats say we'll hear about it in the coming days ahead of the official deadline. But this is mostly a private and fundraising trip out west to collect as much coin as possible from wealthy donors out there.
All right, Ed O'Keefe at the White House for us, Ed. Thank you.